โมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ So blessings to you all. This week we're remembering the day Magha Puja, the full moon in February. So it's often known as Sangha Day. So in one sense it's a reminder of the importance of community, how that has played a big role right from the time of the Buddha through to the present day. The Buddhist community is made up of monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, everybody. Everybody who is interested to follow the path of Buddha. And obviously when you get groups of people, whether it's centered around a monastery or a center, Buddhist center, or any other formation, it's important to see the value of harmony, harmonious relations between people, because we all benefit when there's some cooperation and harmony between members of a community. So the discipline for monks and nuns emphasizes that, the way we practice and train. You know, we value the importance of the qualities of mutual respect, forgiveness, looking after each other, looking after new ones, looking after the old ones, setting aside our differences when we can't fully agree on something, then we agree to disagree. And we learn, how to get on together even when we don't always agree on everything. Not in a paranoid way where you can't cope with a bit of dissent or disputes, but learning how to resolve them peacefully and ideally quickly, so that everyone can benefit and carry on with their practice. And this is something that Ajahn Chah, my teacher, recognized, always encouraged the monks to meet in harmony, meet together regularly, meet together with mutual respect, kindness, to learn to get on together. And perhaps that's one reason why his Sangha of monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen has grown continuously since he was alive till the present day, because he was very skillful in pointing out and encouraging the Sangha to live together harmoniously, and to see the value of that for all of us in our practice. We all benefit. Now, I'm always impressed because I've lived in the Ajahn Chah Sangha for almost 40 years, so I know many, many monks and nuns and lay practitioners, and it's a very diverse group of people. Whether you talk about the Sangha in Thailand or around the world, many different people from different backgrounds have joined the Sangha. Obviously some join and leave again, but many join and stay. And you see the value of the support and the good conditions and good environment for practicing the Dhamma you get from Sangha. And you see how people who may normally in other walks of life probably would have nothing to do with each other, wouldn't know each other or wouldn't want to know each other, can still live together very closely sometimes and work together, practice together in relative peace and harmony. Of course, our practice is a learning experience. No one would deny that. So yes, sometimes we disagree, have differences of opinion on things, but the Sangha and the good environment of the Sangha helps us to get through those well. And we live with an attitude of forgiveness. And that's not just a one-off thing, it's an attitude. Something that the Buddha pointed out is just normal for a noble one. A noble one is from anyone who's partially or fully enlightened, anyone who's wise and peaceful. They will have an attitude of forgiveness, meaning they see the value of not holding on to a grudge. Because what does a grudge do? It just blemishes your mind, causes you suffering, and often will lead on to behavior, conduct that harms others as well. So the noble ones always live with an attitude of forgiveness, even for people who harm them quite directly or indirectly, or just have different views from them. They don't dwell on it. Their practice has reached a point where they're established in sila, samadhi, panya. They may not be fully enlightened, but they don't bear grudges and hold on to ill will, and certainly don't seek to get revenge on people who may have hurt or harmed them. That's why it's so lovely to meet noble ones. They're peaceful, they're tolerant, they don't cause trouble to others. So that's why people are attracted or drawn to noble ones. And for Ajahn Chah, why were so many people from so many different backgrounds drawn to him? Because he had this quality of compassion, forgiveness. Obviously, what we remember from him, like the Buddha, is the teachings, the wisdom is probably what is left for us mostly now in the books and the talks, the recollections. It's a bit harder to pin down what it is to have an attitude of forgiveness. But if you meet someone in person, a living teacher, then you may get that reflection. You get a sense of safety, security, trust, that you don't have to worry that the teacher is going to somehow get you, get you back. Because that's what the noble ones are like. There's a story I often quote about a teacher called Lumpur Samrum, who lived in Thailand, forest monk who was very well practiced, very wise, compassionate monk who lived with this attitude of forgiveness. And he, one day he was walking back from alms round with his monks into the monastery, and it's a forest monastery, it's a hill, and it had deer in it. And the deer, I don't know why the deer in Thailand in the mating season seem to be a bit rougher than the deer here. We never have problems with the deer in our monastery, but in Thailand, perhaps because the monasteries are smaller, there's a smaller space, so they're more closer to the monks and meet the monks more often. But sometimes when the deer, the males, are in season, the mating season, they become a bit aggressive. So Lumpur was walking back into the monastery from alms round in the morning, and one of the male deer ran up to him and charged him, knocked him to the ground, and then gored him with his antlers and opened up his stomach, created a horrible wound, and there's blood everywhere, and his intestines were exposed. He didn't die, but he was in incredible agony. And some of the villagers nearby saw this, and they were so incensed and angry with the deer that they ran towards it with their machetes, which farmers tend to carry. But before they reached it, Lumpur put his hand up and said, don't hurt it. You don't need to get back or hurt or punish this deer, just let it go. And of course the deer ran away. So there was not a single moment of anger or grudge or ill will in his mind. It was immediate forgiveness. And he just said, look, this is my old karma, come back to me. That's right view, isn't it? When you have right view, you accept that every experience you're having is old karma coming back to you. Of course, every moment you're making fresh karma, but you're constantly, through your senses, receiving old karma. So even somebody verbally or physically attacks you, or a deer charges you and injures you, and that's old karma coming back to you. So Noble One, they understand that immediately, so there's no grudge. There's pain, and there may be some suffering with that pain, but there's no grudge in the mind, no wish to seek revenge or harm. And you can see that happens quite naturally living in Sangha, or even in another broader community, say a community of Buddhists. You're learning that every day, how to practice and live with an attitude of forgiveness. The attitude of forgiveness doesn't mean to say you'll never get anybody say or do something that hurts you or harms you. You may still get that because you have old karma. But your fresh karma is always coming from a place of right view, compassion, forgiveness, letting go. Understanding that if you hold on to anger or ill will or hatred, you're just burning up your own mind. You're just suffering for yourself, whatever anyone else has done, good or bad. So Sangha Day, Magga Puja, is like this. You're recognizing the value of Sangha and some of the good things we get from Sangha. And particularly the harmony, the cooperation, the good example we get from Sangha. Of course, there's the teaching as well, the simple teaching, or the simple verse that we call the heart of Buddhism. So, abandoning evil or unwholesome states, cultivating wholesome, skillful states, and purifying our mind. It's like the pocket version of Buddhism, or we say the heart of the Buddhist teachings. And every Buddha will teach this simple reflection, apparently. That's what it says. The line after is Etam Buddhana Sasanang. All Buddhas teach this. So in Thailand they call this the heart of Buddhism, the heart of the Buddha Sasana. Sasana means dispensation of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha. And this is the heart. So it's like something you can literally keep written on a piece of paper in your pocket, maybe near your heart, or write it down and put it in a locket and hang it around your heart. Or if you're a bit more advanced, maybe just mentally embed it in your heart, in your consciousness. Abandon the unwholesome, cultivate the wholesome, purify your mind. And then it's a constant reflection that you can take with you anywhere. So it means you always have Buddhism or the Buddhist teachings or the Buddha Sasana with you. And this is one of the most important principles of the Buddhist teachings, is how to internalize what you've learned and what you've heard, what you've read. Because until you've internalized it, it always remains slightly outside of yourself, doesn't it? Slightly superficial. Like many Buddhists we meet, or even we used to be like that ourselves maybe. We think Buddhism makes sense, a lot of wise sayings that the Buddha said, all sounds good, good ideas, good philosophy, good concepts. But until we start practicing, it's just like Ajahn Chah used to say, it's just like food on the shelf in your kitchen. You have all these gourmet ingredients and recipe books on your shelves in your kitchen, but until you actually make the food and eat it, you don't really benefit from it. You don't get any nourishment from uncooked food. You have to cook it and then eat it. And the Buddhist teachings have to be drawn within, inside us, inside our heart. And so sometimes it's very useful to have very simple, to the point teachings like abandon evil, do good, purify your mind, because it's easy to remember. And it's a reflection you can bring up any day of the week, any place you're in, home, work, travel, in a temple, on the street, it doesn't matter. You can pause and say, am I cultivating the good at this moment? Am I abandoning the unwholesome at this moment? Am I purifying my mind in any way at this moment or not? It's a very simple reflection. Probably what the quality that most supports that is mindfulness. Bringing up mindfulness. When people say, why do you practice mindfulness? Why is mindfulness important? Well, it's for this very reason. To bring up this quality of knowing what you're doing, knowing what you're saying, knowing what you're thinking in the present moment, at any time in your day, and knowing whether you're following this simple teaching. Are you abandoning the unwholesome, cultivating the wholesome? Bringing up mindfulness is already cultivating the wholesome, so you're going in the right direction. So Ajahn Chah used to say, just ask yourself the question, from time to time through your day, what am I doing right now? What am I thinking? What am I saying? What am I doing? What is my conduct? And a huge part of our practice is training in what you might call right or correct conduct. And right or correct in the Buddhist sense means that conduct of body, speech and mind that isn't harming yourself or others, isn't bringing yourself or others more suffering. So not only do we need to be more mindful and bring up more mindfulness, we also need to be able to reflect, to contemplate, because we don't always immediately know whether something we're thinking or saying is leading to more suffering or not. Sometimes it's very clear, some kinds of behavior quite obviously going to cause yourself or others suffering. But a lot of life is more subtle than that, isn't it? Especially when we are on our own and we're just dwelling in our own thoughts. If your mindfulness does slip away, it's quite easy to get caught into unskillful trains of mind, trains of thought, and dwelling on the past with negativity, thinking of the future with anxiety, worrying about things, judging ourselves, judging others. All of this is very normal human behavior, which we're all quite used to, I'm sure. But we slip into it so easily, which is why we have no real choice but to keep coming back and bringing up mindfulness, practicing that. So meditation is practicing it in the most intense way, but bringing up the quality of presence of mind, bringing that to all our activities is always going to be useful. And reflecting, learning to look at your mind more closely and notice the different intentions that are coming up and the thoughts, and being honest. Because ultimately no one can do this for us. We have to be our own witness, Ajahn Chah used to say. If you're having a thought, say you are not yet developed, you haven't yet developed your attitude of forgiveness, and you're dwelling on what somebody else said or did with some negativity, resentment, that's where you need to be really honest and witness for yourself that you are suffering at that moment. And the same with all our desires, our unfulfilled ambitions, desires that quite often lead to more selfish or greedy behavior. To note that when it's coming up and recognize this is unwholesome, this is to be abandoned. The wholesome is to be cultivated. And there's always the opposite of any unwholesome mental state. There'll always be an opposite, something better, something more fruitful for you, for others. But you have to make that effort to switch over your mind, to replace it, or to introduce a new way of thinking. And that's often quite hard because we're stubborn. And sometimes we can do it when other people are around, and that's again one of the values of Sangha and community. When you're with other people, you tend to be more careful what you say and do. Unless you're with, maybe you pick the wrong friends. Like me, when I was young, I had many friends, and some of my friends were always getting me into trouble because they would choose unwise actions and ways of behavior, and when I followed them and joined them, then tend to get in trouble quite quickly. But generally speaking, when you're with other people, you're a little bit more on guard, aren't you? There's more consequences to your lapses of mindfulness, so you tend to be more mindful of what you say, what you do. But when you're on your own, it's like anything goes, doesn't it? We have this kind of natural feeling, I'm free, I'm on my own, I can think whatever I want, and half the time it's not very skillful. I can do whatever I want, especially nowadays, technology, smartphones, computers have become like an extension of our thinking process. So when you're on your own, you look at that thing, or you indulge some particular mental kilesa, a bit of greed, lustful desire, or greed for something or other, or negativity, or you indulge in printing a few things maybe that are really hurtful. Maybe you just do it anonymously, but you send it out to someone, or in general, because you've got your anger and it's just coming out in your text or whatever. So the technology now has become an extension for this very same practice. How do you use technology? Is it to abandon the unwholesome and cultivate the wholesome, or cultivate the unwholesome and abandon the wholesome? That's a question to ask every day, every moment. Earlier today, someone was asking me, how do you abandon obsession with endlessly watching TV shows, series, soap operas, movies? Because there's so much now, you can just be on Netflix or whatever else it is, I don't know all the names, but you can be on that all day long if you want, binging. And your mind, at the end of it, what does it bring your mind? Well, probably not many wholesome dhammas, and a lot of delusion, and maybe even increases your tendency towards different kinds of moods. If you keep watching violence on TV or movies or in video games, that's going to stick in your mind, isn't it? That's how you're conditioning your mind. If you keep watching porn or just a lot of sensuality, that's what's conditioning your mind, and it makes an impact on you, an impression on you, wherever you are, even if you're on your own. Nobody else knows, you know, so it makes an impression on your mind. So this is how we apply this very simple teaching, from day to day. How am I spending my time? What am I thinking, doing, watching? How is it affecting me? What kind of karma am I making here? This is just daily practice, introducing the awada patimokkha, these 3 lines on a daily basis. And in your relationships, your relationship to other people, your partner, that's probably the hardest thing of all, to be mindful when you speak or do things with your partner or behind their back. How you relate to technology, how you use that, how you relate to the world around you at work and in society. The one thing in common is that you're present in everything. This is why the Buddha said we have to internalize these teachings and this way of developing mindfulness and reflection. Because wherever you go, you're there. Even if nobody else is there, you're there. You know, you remember, and it leaves an impression on your mind. That's just the reality of life. This human mind, this consciousness absorbs mental impressions, sense impressions, every moment of every day. So if your inputs continue to be unwholesome, unskillful, well, that's how it will go. That's how it's conditioned. And it will have its result. So you keep having visual images, thoughts, emotions based on what previously, how you've conditioned your mind. It will come up again and again and again, over and over again. And one of the biggest sort of problems meditators and Buddhist practitioners find is that they're always looking outside at the world around, other people, the world in general, the news. And of course that is part of our life and it's necessary, but we tend to do it too much. We use our eyes too much, and then we get lost in what we see. We use our ears too much. When I say too much, I mean we use them to the point where we're not very mindful and aware. So we absorb so much visual and audio information that we can't process it all, and a lot of it can give rise to distraction, confusion, greed, anger, anxiety, fear. As we practice and employ this simple teaching of the Buddha, abandon the unwholesome, cultivate the wholesome, you start to see that, how that's happening in your day. And it brings up this sense of wanting to take more care of your mind, because you're always present, whatever you're doing. You always know, there's no such thing as getting away with something because nobody saw, nobody heard, nobody knew about it. It doesn't work like that. You know about it because your mind is there and it absorbs that impression. Even just a thought leaves an impression on your mind. Our mind is very sponge-like. It absorbs things all the time. That's why when we're with kids, you have to be so careful, because little kids, they're like the best kind of sponge. If you talk to the doctors and the scientists, the first 7 years of your life, your brain is just absorbing everything. So if you're with kids, young kids, whatever you do around them, they're picking it up, consciously or unconsciously, mindfully, unmindfully. So if you argue around them, you're violent around them, you're careless around them, you're greedy around them, then they're picking that up. Quite unconsciously or consciously, they'll be picking it up. So it matters, not just for ourselves, but particularly for young ones. And then, of course, for other people, even adults, will be affected by our behavior as well. But even if there's no one around and you're totally alone, on retreat, in your cabin somewhere, you're there. You are still affected by your own activity, your own conduct. So this is why it's vital to internalize these teachings and just keep using them over and over again. Sometimes just to protect your mind, see it as something that needs protecting. Sometimes it's educating the mind in the right way, giving it the right inputs that improve it. And how do we know that our mind is going in the right direction? Well, the simple sort of reflection is, how peaceful are you? How bright is your mind? How peaceful is it? This is sometimes the way the Buddha or enlightened teachers, they observe people and they just see how radiant their mind is. And they see whether they're going in the right direction in their practice. But we have to learn to do that for ourselves. If you're endlessly dwelling on things with negativity, you should be able to start recognizing that this is not good. When your mind is getting darker, you're feeling more physically less well, mentally less well. Whatever way you want to describe it, your trains of thought are more dark, more negative. But that's something we have to do something about through the practice. We get help from teachers, mentors, friends, colleagues, of course. But in the end, we have to do it, don't we? We have to dig ourselves out of the hole that we've got into. We have to bring up more clarity, more mindfulness, so that we can have a little bit more detachment and learn to step back sometimes and just look at our experience and then be honest. And if you can see a certain desire or has become an attachment or an obsession, and it's really affecting you, then that detached awareness of mindfulness can help expose that or reveal that to you, and then lead on to maybe the insight or the wisdom that says, this is to be abandoned. This is causing me suffering. I've got to do something about this. And as that realization comes up, then that may lead you to try harder and look for methods to abandon whatever that particular desire or problem is that's in your mind that mindfulness has exposed. why is mindfulness so useful? It's because it brings you this quality we say detached awareness. It's a phrase that Ajahn Chah used all the time. It's mai yin di, mai yin rai. It means not delighting in, nor averse to, not attracted to, not averse or angry with, not grabbing, holding on to, not pushing away. So the presence of mindfulness brings up the quality of equanimity, if only for a short period of time. Equanimity means keeping your mind in the middle towards whatever it is that you're experiencing or contemplating. There's a very neutral but observant and clear state of mind. So then if you're seeing a certain way of thinking, desiring, attaching is causing suffering, that starts to become clear when your mind is more neutral. So you establish mindfulness, then you're looking back at what is just gone on in your mind. So sometimes it could be a long way back. Sometimes you're working on memory and previous experience, but it can be just what is just arisen, a particular thought or intention. You say, oh, hold on, I've seen this before. This is causing me suffering. This is where the problem lies. This is to be abandoned, let go of. Mindfulness gives you that detachment enough to be with whatever it is, but not to indulge it or follow it. To let it go, let it be, let it fade out by itself. And when you're practicing meditation, you'll notice when your mindfulness gets a bit stronger, more continuous, you can do that for periods of time. Desires come up and you see it, you know it, but then you let it go. Maybe the desire to move because you've got a bit of a pain in your leg, but you can say, well, I may move later, but at the moment I'll just watch mindfully. So you're learning not just to react to every painful feeling or unpleasant sensation in your body, you're just seeing the feeling as a feeling, or the sensation as a sensation. And you have more choice to decide move or not, change posture or not, stop meditating or not. And often people get their breakthroughs when they're doing this because they realize they don't have to follow every impulse or every desire. They can also be mindful of a desire or an impulse or a thought and then let go, let it be. And more often than not, it will fade away. But even if it returns, it's not being fed by anything. If mindfulness is established, you can see it almost like a fire going out through lack of fuel. Or some ice that seemed very solid and big, just melting away to nothing. Whatever way you want to look at it, you're seeing the temporary, impermanent and selfless nature of thoughts, feelings, impulses, desires. And that's where wisdom really grows in your practice. It comes out of the stillness of mindfulness. You learn so much, both about the world around you and your external conduct, but then more importantly also the internal mental states and intentions that lie behind all of our conduct. So out of stillness comes wisdom. And this is that third phrase that sometimes seems so elusive when you contemplate the Awada Patimokkha. Purify the mind. How do we do that? We'll establish more mindfulness. Even just establishing mindfulness itself is already a form of purification, because whenever mindfulness is there, confusion, doubt is gone. When you're mindful, your wisdom can function, your intelligence can function at its best. You can see things more clearly. So already that's a purification in itself. But in particular, as mindfulness becomes more consistent, more continuous in your mind, then you can see things, see the processes by which suffering arises. You can see by holding on to certain desires, believing them, following them, you end up with suffering in the end. Therefore, recognize the desire and let it be, let it go. Both liking and disliking, attraction and aversion, are both leading to suffering. So you develop this place in the middle where you're neither caught into attraction or aversion. You can now look back at those states and see them as they are, as temporary mental states that arise, pass away. And that's where you can really purify your mind. Attachment to the body, attachment to feelings, attachment to thoughts, ideas, all the things that fill our mind. Gradually we start to see our own mind and its mental activity in a different light. For some people it may be very fast. If you develop really clear, strong states of samadhi, well, that insight may arise very quickly. For others it may be a more gradual, slow process, hard work. Just keep developing the mindfulness, bringing it up, contemplating your experience, letting go. But however fast or slow, it doesn't matter. You just learn how to practice and keep applying it. So these three phrases, abandoning the unwholesome, cultivating the wholesome, purifying your mind, commit them to memory, and they become like the heart of Buddhism. That is Buddhism. Wherever you go, someone says, "What do you do as a Buddhist?" I abandon the unwholesome, I cultivate the wholesome, I purify my mind. That's what I'm trying to do. You may not have finished the job yet, of course, we're all practicing. But that gives you a lot of confidence, doesn't it, when you have that very simple guideline. You can even tell someone else it. Tell them, "Oh, this is what I'm doing, abandoning the unwholesome, sitting here meditating." So if it's the heart of Buddhism, something you really have to bring into your heart, your spiritual heart, the citta, consciousness, get it established there, then it's like you've got a little bit of the Buddha with you wherever you go. That quality of knowing is nourished by abandoning the unwholesome, cultivating the wholesome. That quality of knowing becomes stronger, clearer, purer, as the Buddha said. So it's like the Buddhist teachings come to live with you, within you, a part of you. So when you go traveling, maybe you go to a place where nobody knows anything about Buddhism. It doesn't matter because you already have Buddhism in your heart. And as long as you're practicing within the bounds of abandoning the unwholesome, cultivating the wholesome, purifying your mind, you know you're not far from what the Buddha taught, what the Buddha realized. So maybe I'll finish the talk there and wish you all well on the occasion of Magha Puja, and maybe we can have some questions afterwards.